Howdy folks, Ranger H here with Ranger H's School of Bushcraft and Self-Reliance. Today I want to go over how to make a tent stake. The reason is, it's a very commonly used implement. We often forget or break them in the field, but also because it's a very useful practical project for learning 4 of the 6 primary basic notches that we need to learn in green wood carving that we use in the field most often. So I'm going to bring the camera in a little closer so you can see what I'm doing, and we'll get to work. Alright, so before we begin, I'm going to be using an Open L number 10 that's been freshly sharpened and stropped. But you can obviously use whatever knife you have available. Now when we're making tent stakes, we want to find a piece of preferably hardwood, although you can practice on softwood all you like. Softwood will work for some applications. In this case, I'm using a piece of crepe myrtle. I find that crepe myrtle actually is somewhat suitable for temporary tent pegs, as when it's harvested, it's very easy to carve, but as it dries, it tends to get harder and stronger. We want our finished tent stake to be about 9 inches, depending upon the type of soil that we're going to be using it in. I already have this one cut down to length, however I'm going to show you how to cut them down to length with nothing but a knife in case that is something you end up needing to do. Diameter should be about 3/4 of an inch, no less than 1/2 inch depending on the wood species, or about the diameter of your thumb. This piece is a little bit small, but it will make a good example piece. And so long as I'm careful not to remove too much material, this will still serve as a good tent stake. To start, we're going to use what's called a buck notch to cut our piece to the length that we want, or close enough to it. And this is an important notch to know, and why I incorporated in this project, because if you don't have a saw or something like that where you can precisely cut safely at a specific location, you need to be able to know how to do this with just your knife. So I'm going to measure out about where I want to cut this piece, about right there, mark it with my thumbnail, and then we'll take our knife. And to perform a buck notch, we are simply going to take the knife in a standard forward push grip, and we are going to push several strong cuts into the piece, working around the circumference until we've gone all the way around. You can see there, we've done cuts all the way around. Now we can see if it's weak enough. It's not quite as weak as I want it, so in this case we're going to turn it around and do the same thing from the opposite direction in the same place. That's much weaker. Now we're going to make our knife safe. Take the stick, bend it right at that point, and it will give us a nice clean break that is very close to the first notch that we need to make for this project. Taking our blank, on the end that we just cut that's already mostly round, we're going to continue rounding this and turn it into what's called a crown notch. Now when we make this crown notch, we want to be careful that the very top of it, the very point of that crown, is not going to be directly over wherever we're going to put our next notch, which will be a 7 notch. In this case, this stick already has some natural curvature, So I'm going to want to put my 7-notch on the inside of that curvature, not the outside. That will give it additional strength and also better retention force for keeping the string on it. So I'm going to offset the point of this crown notch to the opposite side by simply taking a few more passes on the near side, like so. Now, the next notch we're going to make is a 7-notch. So we're going to come down from the end of the stick, about 3 fingers, mark it, and we're going to start our 7-notch with a stop cut. Once we have that stop cut, we'll start pulling petals out underneath of it to form our 7-notch. Just like that. Now keep in mind that you don't want the depth of the 7-notch to be any greater than 1/3 or 1/2 at the absolute most of the diameter of the stick. Last step in making a tent stake is simply to put the tapered point on the end, and depending upon what kind of project you're making, you may want this point to be 3 times the diameter of the stick, or in this case we actually want to double that, so we'll bring our point notch almost all the way up to the 7-notch. One important thing is, again, just like we wanted to offset the point of our crown so it doesn't split out the face above the 7-notch, we also want to offset the point of this tapered end so that it's not in the pith or the center of the wood where the wood is weakest. To start this notch, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start with a standard push grip and just take off the corner of this end all the way around. Once we've done that, we can start taking pieces off, working our way down, trying to keep this a long, smooth taper as even as possible. Now that we've got most of our taper done, I'm going to focus on this very point. We don't want the point to be very thin. We want it to stop somewhat abruptly so that it has a good bit of strength, but we also don't want it to be so obtuse that it's difficult to drive. I have a little bit of pith here, so I'm going to work to offset this point some. And with that, we have a finished tent stake. Thanks for joining me for this simple project. I really like this project for beginner bushcraft because it's something that you can make out of yard trimmings that you find off the side of the road. You don't even have to go into the woods. You can make a lot of them, and they're a useful tool that you can practice a useful skill while building. One other thing worth note is that you can take a tent stake that's made of a good wood, preferably a hardwood, and you can actually fire harden them, and that will make them last even longer. So something like this could become a permanent part of your kit, and you can decorate them and personalize them and use them for a long time, having a project that you've put some time into, you've got some skill displayed in, and you didn't have to spend any money or much time to make it. Again, thanks for joining me. Go out and give this a shot for yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.